We're going live. I'm live with some Nabrik. Hi, everybody. Oh, wow. 13 people are here. Thanks for coming to hang out. And I hope you're all healthy and safe and all that stuff. So who's drinking with me? I think this is a good time to drink. Although the last time I was on here, I was having I'm a pretty stoic person normally. And I was pretty close to tears, which is like very weird for me. Getting all emotional about that was the day that Illinois, the state that I live in, shut down everybody in mandatory stay at home, and I was getting bummed out by everything going on in the world, and I was worried about getting products to you guys. I was worried about my team, my family, their families. So this is a different time. I'm feeling a little bit better. And hopefully you guys are as well. So I'm drinking some Knob Creek today. Usually I like to drink beer because that's just what I like. But I don't have the beer today because I don't have any in my fridge, and I didn't think it would be worth the risk of going to the store. So I'm going to crack this open. How you guys doing? Been drinking for a couple weeks now. Hey, Richard. Hey, Rodrigo. Hi, Randy. Tequila. Nice. I'm glad that you guys are here, and we're going to talk. There's a request. Somebody left a comment on one of the YouTube videos yesterday, and they wanted to have one of these live chats. They wanted to bring the Drinking Leather back, which I've been doing now for probably almost a year, but very infrequently. I think this is the 7th one. And they wanted to know about the history of Horween and the history of Ashland. So I quickly took some bullet points on that stuff, and we'll go over that. And I brought up some wallets. I actually brought the first production Herbie ever, which I don't think anybody's ever seen other than me. So I've got that right in front of me here that we'll take a look at. All right. Knob Creek, and I got my ice. Whoa, that's a little tall. I wanted to let you guys know that I've got some really interesting stuff in the works for all of you, and for everybody in the world. I think this is going to be a larger thing, and it's consumed a lot of my time over the last week, which is why I've been pulling back on the daily videos of what we're shipping out, because I'm trying to focus on this project. The first Herbie is before we were even a company. I'll give you a sneak peek. This is the first fat Herbie ever. And you can see it's become quite dark. This was natural shell. But I think this one was made in 2010. And we became an official company in 2011. So we'll talk about that and sort of the history of Ashland. And today I'm going to make a hard cutoff in about an hour. My wife is working at the hospital right now, and I want to make her dinner before she comes home. I've got some steaks that were frozen in our freezer that my dad sent to me for Christmas like a year ago. So finally getting to pull those out and make her a nice dinner for being the hero that she is at work. She's directly dealing with some of the coronavirus stuff going on. And interesting about that for her is it's almost like her regular life is even more stressful. And I hadn't really thought of that. Like, 'cause she deals with cancer patients that are very compromised. So her normal life is stressful, and this is almost like easier for her, even though it's like a horrible thing to deal with. And that perspective, like when that clicked for me, I realized how much of a hero all these people working at hospitals are. And I think obviously I was taking that for granted. And I think it's an interesting time that we can start to think a little bit more about how these people are actual heroes and don't get enough praise that they perhaps should. Gregory, hey, Kevin. Thanks for the kind words, Kevin. Gregory, Shell Wallet for 2 years. Nice. Aaron, man, good to see you. We should play some music together. Yes, and if you need help setting up audio recording, I'm a nerd for that stuff. I love making digital music. I've made a couple albums myself that you can find on the internet. It's probably not the style of music that you like, because I like very niche type of things. Yeah. 2013, you have our 2013 Herbie. That's one of the older ones. What's funny is this, so like the Herbie now has 4 different pattern pieces. There's these 2 card holder pattern pieces on the inside. There's a bill slot on the back, which is this piece here. And then we call this the middle piece. I designed a Fat Herbie that has 2 pattern pieces, and we only made one of them, and I gave it to my friend as a wedding gift like 9 years ago, or 8 years ago, 2011. But what I did was I took this piece and made it really long, so it had like wings, and then I cut a slit into the middle piece so it folded through the inside, and then stitched it down. It's pretty cool, and I still like that. The problem is it's so huge, it's not feasible to make it in shell. So I gave up on that dream. But we could probably figure that out again if we had to. All right, so cheers, everybody. Thanks for coming to hang out. 24 of you here. It's probably a new record. I haven't done a lot of these live streams. And I think when we first started the channel, obviously like less people were here. So cheers, everybody. And I want to encourage everybody as I go through this. I'm not a lecturer type. I actually used to teach music, but not much of a teacher. But I do like to sort of stream of consciousness. So I tell my experience about and what I've learned when going over the history of Horween here. Absolutely feel free, send in some questions and send me on little tangents, because I'm very close to the topic of Horween and Ashland, obviously. But what's helpful is asking those questions that I might not have thought to preemptively answer. So please feel free to ask me some questions. The story of Horween is super cool. And I started working there in 2005. So I started as they hit their 100th anniversary, which is just super crazy to think about. So there's this incredible history that I sort of am just like the afterthought of at this point. Like I'm irrelevant in the grand scheme of things there. So it was really interesting to come into this company that already has this amazing 100-year foundation. And what's super cool is they are continuing to exist because they haven't changed their philosophy. And that's why when people ask me for business advice, I tell them that the best thing to do is have a really strong foundation. Like, what are you about? And what Horween is about is not compromising on the quality. So they put so much effort into the materials and into the actual process of producing this material. And they won't compromise it because people want it cheaper. And that's their core principle. And when I go over the story here, I think you'll see an interesting thing, which is not much has changed in over 115 years now. So Horween Leather Company started in 1905 by Isidore Horween. What's cool about Isidore Horween is he was an immigrant to the United States. He's a true American dream. And he immigrated from the Ukraine. And I found on Wikipedia that he came to the United States in 1893. And what just happened to be happening at the same time in Chicago was the World's Fair. And Isidore Horween went to the World's Fair and saw an exposition on leather tanning and leather. And he thought, that's pretty cool. And he interacted with whoever was there. He got a job at a tannery. And he worked at a tannery for a short amount of time. And he thought to himself, wow, I could do this better. So he started his own tannery right here in Chicago in a neighborhood called Goose Island, which is just next door to where they're currently located. They moved locations 15 years later to the corner of Elston Avenue and Ashland Avenue, which is how we came up with our company name. It's right on Ashland, which is the street that runs sort of through the center of the city. And I like to think of it as the sort of like the heart of the city because it goes through the center. And there's this rumor that Ashland got its name because when the city burnt down, they put all the ashes and like made the street, but that's nonsense. So I like that idea of sort of like a phoenix rebirth in Ashland. The Horween Whisperer. How you doing, LMBLV? So Isidore Horween was an incredible guy. That American spirit is really neat, and he started making a leather product called shell cordovan, which I have several different pieces of shell cordovan wallets here to show you later. And that product was originally made for razor strops because in 1905 the popularization of the safety razor did not happen yet. So people were still using these straight razors that they needed to sharpen and hone, and they would use razor strops to sharpen and hone their straight razors. Gillette popularized the safety razor, and the demand for the straight razors and subsequently the razor strops went away. So they had this material that they really liked, but there was no home for it, so to speak. Luckily, though, I like to visualize the scenario in the early 1900s of Isidore Horween, and this is before cars, driving down or taking a horse and buggy down the street to a company called Florsheim, which is also located in Chicago. I drive past the old Florsheim building infrequently here in the city, and think about this moment. But he went over to Florsheim and had this leather, and so why don't we try to make some shoes out of this? And they did. And you can still see, in fact, if you go to this, I'm going to link you a blog post I wrote, if I can copy it. Let me link you this. Yeah, I wrote a blog post called Cordovan Classic Leather, Classic Color Part 1. Let me put it in the chat. There you go. So in that article, if you look at the first page of the newspaper, and I forget what the date is on the newspaper. I can't see from here, but you can see what the original advertising was for these Florsheim shoes. And Horween is so crazy that they have all their old accounting records from even back then. And I found the oldest sales receipt for Florsheim, and I believe it's from 1921. And you can see that on the third image. It looks like an old piece of paper. It's handwritten. It says Florsheim Shoe Co. And it says address city, which is funny because it's like next door is the address. But it shows how much stuff they bought back in 1921. So Horween Leather Company had to transition that shell cordovan away from razor strops and into footwear. What's interesting about that is they encountered some competition from a company called 3M, I believe, and they were making a sort of rubberized version of cordovan at the time that looked really great, and it had the same sort of like aesthetics of the shell cordovan. But the problem is it was not breathable at all. And one of the great demonstrations that they had back then, and I don't think they still do it, but I know that even up through the 1980s, they were still doing this demonstration of taking a drag off a cigarette and blowing it right through the piece of shell to demonstrate how porous the shell cordovan was and how it was breathable. So nobody had ever really been able to compare to that shell cordovan material, even with other non-leather substrates. So I definitely encourage you guys to check out that link, because those photos are like the items themselves, like the photos or whatever, but those actual documents and old books that are still at the tannery are incredible. And that newspaper is still there at the tannery. I just think I love the history in that. $7 pair of shoes. It's crazy. Or $6.95. I guess 5 cents is a big deal. So shell cordovan was a big deal. Take a look at my notes here. Oh, also interesting. When the tannery moved locations from that original location in 1905, in 1920, they moved to their current location. And they were sort of like collaborating with another tannery at the time. They bought that property that had an existing tannery, and that tannery was called Herman Lesher and Company. So for many years, they were sort of working in tandem, making different leathers in one building under two brand names, I suppose. although they like sort of merged. So it was like Horween and Company plus Herman Lesher and Company on their letterhead. And one of the tannages that they were making at Lesher was what is now I'm calling the 1940s calf. And it's a leather called timber tanned that Horween has sitting there for almost 80 years now. And I was able to get my hands on some of it. And that's the original Lesher formulation. And Horween cannot reproduce that leather. They've been trying to do it for years and years. So a couple of you in here, I think, have picked up some of I call it old calf or 1940s calf. You picked up that leather, and it's really interesting. I don't have any in front of me here, but that's what a crazy story that they like held it for years to try to figure out how to make it again. Hey, Vegavis, good to see you. Hey, Kevin, how you guys doing? And again, everybody that's joining us, please feel free to jump in, shoot me some questions. I'm going to try to peek over and answer anything you got. Because again, like I sometimes don't think of like obvious questions to ask because I know a little too much. I'm a little too close to it. So Horween wasn't just making shell cordovan back then. Very importantly, they were also making a little leather called Chromexcel, which I don't have any Chromexcel in front of me either. I got a bunch of Chromexcel boots and shoes upstairs. Cheers again, guys. Thanks for coming to hang out. So Chromexcel is super interesting. Back then, and even still today, there are many motors that use seals and gaskets that are made out of leather. Back then, that's all there was. There was no synthetic seals. So in something like World War I and World War II, they had all these motors made in Detroit for trucks, tanks, things like that. And each of the motors required these seals. So Chromexcel was used in these motor seals. And because the Chromexcel has two specific features, it makes it perfect for a motor seal. And the word chrome is talking about the chrome tannage of that leather. It's a chrome tan leather as opposed to a veg tan leather. Those are sort of the two main leather tannage types that we talk about most often. There are many others using different materials. But the chrome tanning leather uses a material called chromium sulfate. It's a chrome salt. And that, what's interesting, if you look at one of the older drinking leathers, I did a chat with a biochemist at Horween, and he described the way that chrome tan leather is kind of, he called it like a Wolverine, where it's this sort of meshing of organic material with metal, which is the chrome. So that makes it much more strong and much more resilient. And specifically, it's heat resilient. So for something like a motor seal, when it's getting really hot, the leather won't crack as easily. It has a much higher temperature heat resistance. And the Excel part of Chromexcel is sort of this combination. So they took a chrome base tannage and they imparted a vegetable retannage on top of it. And what a vegetable retannage did for them on something like a motor seal was it allowed it to hold its shape. So vegetable tan leathers like the shell cordovan or what I've got, like this is Dublin. So something like Dublin, if you wet this and let it dry around a mold, it will hold that shape. And that's a very specific characteristic of vegetable tan leather. So combining those two, you get something that's like almost perfectly made for a motor seal, where it has to resist heat and it has to mold to the shape of that seal. So for many years, they were using Chromexcel only for motor seals. And actually, even when I was working in 2005 at the tannery, leather for motor seals was still kind of a thing. It's been trickling down and down and down sort of every year. But back then, they were making so much Chromexcel for motor seals. So that's how Chromexcel became. It was very much a functional material that was used in as a component in engines. And then they figured out that, hey, you know what, this stuff's pretty good for footwear. So places like Alden picked it up. I don't know if Floorshine picked it up, but I would imagine that they did. I don't know a lot of the brands of footwear that used Chromexcel way back then, but now you can find Chromexcel everywhere. If you've been following my videos recently, you'll see that I've picked up a couple different pairs from Grant Stone in Chromexcel, and they're incredible. I've got a pair of boat shoes that I've had from Oak Street for almost 10 years or 8 years now. Math, 7 years. And those are the most they're so comfortable. I have multiple pairs of Chrome Excel boat shoes, which is a very popular use for them, and boots and shoes and things like that. So you can find Chrome Excel boot shoes and Shell Cordovan boots and shoes everywhere. Those were the two original products that Horween was making in the early 1900s, from 1905, the Shell Cordovan. I don't know the exact date on Chrome Excel. It's probably like 1911, something like that. So these are products that are over 100 years old that are still existing in essentially their same state as they were 100 years ago. The only things that have changed, and this is going to sound pretty intense, but some of the fats that they were using back in 1905 are now illegal. I don't know, don't quote this, but imagine a scenario if they were using like an endangered species like seal blubber or something. They switch that. So now everything is very environmentally friendly. But it is crazy to think that they may have used like very raw animal fats back then. Vega Beast. Love that poster. I like it too. I still have a few of those, and I give them out to our friends in the city there, local makers, and some friends, customers of ours that have been very supportive to us. I still have a couple left over. Gregory, thanks for coming to hang out. How are your Grant Stone boots breaking in? Do you have them in Shell or Chrome Excel? I have Grant Stone diesel boots in natural Chrome Excel. If you take a look at my channel, you can see I've been doing sort of infrequent updates. I've only had them for a couple weeks, but I want to tell you something. They're super, super comfortable. And I think I want to give them credit, but how do I say this without being offensive? I want to give them credit. I think they're comfortable. They're very comfortable. In fact, they're my most comfortable boot right now. I think the credit should go to the owner, Wyatt, from Grant Stone, for telling me what size to get. And I think I might have been getting the wrong size shoes forever. I ended up, usually wear like a 10.5, like a running shoe. The Grant Stones that I have are 9.5 triple wide, which is like so far away from what I would have guessed to pick. They're super comfortable. I picked up a pair of long wings from them that are in a 9.5 E, not triple E, and they do not fit as well. So I think the tolerances on sizing are very small, or much smaller than I had thought they were. I would suggest contacting any of these footwear makers directly and getting specific sizing advice based on your current collection of what fits you well, and let them guide you in that direction. That's what he did for me. In fact, he looked at my foot and said, "You need this size," and it blew my mind. And he was absolutely right. They're perfect. But they are Chrome Excel and they're super comfortable. I love them. I have a pair of Shell. The only pair of Shell footwear I have are a pair of plain toe boots from Viberg that I don't think they really make. And I think they hooked me up with something special. And I really like those. They're super firm, a little less comfortable. I'm imagining, and people describe the way that Vibergs wear in, is they get more comfortable the more that you wear them. So I'm expecting to beat those up. So right now I'm alternating between those two pairs. Today is a Grant Stone day, but yesterday I was wearing the Viberg, and tomorrow I'll be wearing the Viberg. I sort of rotate them back and forth to try to give you guys some feedback on both those pairs. Kevin, how did you get your job at Horween? Did you know somebody that worked there? I know Nick Horween, and I grew up with Nick Horween. Not to name drop or anything, but I in the suburbs of Chicago here is where I grew up, and Nick and I went to the same middle school, so we have known each other since we were like 12. We would hang out and do stupid crap, like play around the neighborhood together, and he gave me a Shell wallet like in high school, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't get it. Didn't make any sense to me. But even back then, I had a Shell wallet in like 2000 or 1998. I had a Shell Cordovan wallet. So I grew up Nick, and after college, in fact, I was in college going to music. I was going to school for music. I was playing in symphonies and jazz bands in California at UC Santa Cruz. And I decided to move away from them and come back to Chicago and go to business school. So believe it or not, I had longer hair back then. I was sort of like a people called me like rock mode Phil. I was in rock mode, cut off all my hair, moved back to Chicago, went to business school, got a undergrad in business here at Roosevelt University in Chicago. And when I moved back, I was looking for a job. I didn't have any income, and I actually went to one of Nick's sister, Natalie Horween, who now also works at the tannery. I went to her high school graduation party, I believe, way back then, and just to help out, like hang out. And I was telling him my situation, and Skip had mentioned to me, he said, we just had a fire at the tannery, and all of our formulations and things to that nature are all on paper because we're a 100-year-old company, and technology was sort of like a second thought for us. And he said, why don't you come by? I know you're good with computers. You're kind of a nerd, and I'm definitely a nerd. And I went to the tannery, and instead of just like putting all their formulations into like a Word document, I made them into an Excel sheet that I programmed, you could call it, to spit out different formulations based on the batch size, and it sort of blew their mind. And that job, that it was supposed to be just a summer job, and that summer job lasted me for 14 years. So that's how I got the job at Horween, and I just fell in love with the material, which is subsequently how I came to start Ashland. So yeah, hope that answered your question, Kevin. Hi, Genesis. Vega V's. If you made more, I'd buy one. I forget what I was talking about. Clayton. What's up, Clayton? Clayton's my good friend from high school, too. He's a friend of Nick as well. Light trees and hey, man, hope you're staying safe. Unfortunately, I got to roll. Have a good one, man. Cheers. Oh, yeah. Maybe I should put this in the frame. Boom. Gregory says, Josh was awesome on sizing the diesel Chrome Excel. Love them. That's awesome. You got to contact the footwear companies to get your right size. Super helpful. Level 100. Well, you knew Nick Horween. I still know Nick Horween. I talked to him yesterday. He's still there. Yeah, he's a good buddy. Excel. Ed F. Good to see you, Ed. My team really likes you, Ed. I'm sure you got that from Amir's message. Ed says, I'm curious as where do you left off of Horween and how you decided to start Ashland, devote your energies towards running Ashland. I was working at Horween up until a few months ago. In October, I decided to amicably part ways with them. And it was something I had thought about for a long time, but was honestly scared to leave because I loved working there. So it was one of those. I feel like there's many moments in my life where I come to a decision, kind of like moving back to Chicago, because you can stick with an easy path that's comfortable, or you can try something hard. And I feel like every time I get to those moments, I get really scared. And then I sort of jump in the deep end. And every time I do that, I come out of the deep end much better than I was before. So in October, I had a conversation with Skip, or maybe it was in September. I had a conversation with Skip Horween, and I said, hey, I've been thinking about taking Ashland full time. And I asked him what he thought, and he was very supportive, and he wanted to support me in that. So I left there, and that's why you've been seeing more of me on YouTube. That's why I've been making more stuff myself. We've hired more people at Ashland. We're trying to do more good stuff, make cool things, spread the word. By the way, there's a bunch of really amazing local makers here in Chicago and a bunch of people that are making really great things around the world that I've had a chance to meet and interact with more this last week, and more on that to come in a week or so. Now I've got a special project. But if you guys know local makers, it's really important to support those guys. It really makes a big difference right now, especially for somebody like me, where we have a team of 8 employees that all have their own families. And we've seen a decrease in some sales volume for us, which we're fine. So don't worry about us. But it's, I could imagine people having a much harder time than me. And we got to support those people right now. So if you got somebody you like and you want to support it, I don't think people really understand how much it means when somebody buys something from a small brand. This is a really big deal, and every dollar really matters to all those people, including myself. So all of you out there, I know many of you in this chat room here, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. It sincerely means a lot. You're supporting a lot of people and doing a good thing, and you're getting a cool wallet. All right, who did I miss? Oh, Kevin, level 100. Favorite pizza spot? I just one of my good buddies is he runs a thing called the Chicago Pizza Summit, which is something that I participated in before, and he has pizza come in from all over the city and has like a big party around it. It's super cool. And I just dropped off some stuff at a place by my house here called Boiler Room, and I like them a lot. There's a new place. There's another place by me called Dante's that I really like. Neither of these are Chicago style pizza. They're sort of more like New York style, Neapolitan style pizzas. But for deep dish, for me, I grew up a Lou Malnati's fan. And my dad, every time he comes back to visit Chicago, he currently lives in California. Every time he comes back, he loads up on Lou Malnati's. So I would have to say for nostalgia and because it's great, Lou Malnati's is my favorite pizza place. I thought about getting Genesis. I thought about getting into making footwear. Yes, I did. But that's a tough business. I think I thought through the logic of having a startup with no funding, which is how Ashland started. We started it on $500, and starting that with Dan, we just didn't have the money. And thinking through the logistics of having different sizes and styles, and then like actually buying lasts and having all that equipment, it was just not feasible. So we went down the small leather goods route. But I've thought about it. Pequods, John, I forgot about Pequods. God, I love Pequods. I go to Pequods probably the most out of all those places. And it's right behind the tannery. So that was dangerous. Kevin, great decision. Phil, thanks, man. Ricky, good to see you, man. Rigondo, we'll be buying a Tony the Ant soon. Hopefully I can get one in color 8 Chrome XL. Good choice. I have a Tony the Ant here. And I should probably get back to my agenda, but Tony the Ant is pretty cool. Especially this, people right now have been really into the English tan Tony the Ants. We've been having a hard time keeping these in stock. The English tan Dublin is so nice. If you guys see anything made out of Dublin, I highly recommend it. It's super cool. JR, you're the one that suggested me doing this today. Thank you so much for suggesting this, and everybody here. I will do whatever you want me to do if there's something you want to see. So JR asked in a comment yesterday in one of the YouTube videos, he said, why don't you bring back Drinking Leather? Tell us the history of Horween, tell us the history of Ashland. That's why I'm here today. So everybody, thank you to JR. Dante's is the jam. I like Dante's. Good call, Clayton. It's dangerous. All these pizza places, like there's so many good pizza places, and they're next to either my house or next to my workshop. And it's that's why I have to do like 1 million push-ups a day. Jesus says, speaking of cool wallets, I got a scratch on my 2-week-old custom intense blue fat Herbie. Can it be filled in? Yeah, you can fill it in. It depends on how deep the scratch is. It's kind of like a car. Like if you scratch up a car finish, if it's a mild scratch, you can fill in that scratch with a wax. And in the case of shell cordovan, you did mention it's shell cordovan, intense blue. I imagine it's shell. That's the only intense blue color I have. If it's intense blue shell, I suggest the cordovan cream from Sapphire. It has a good amount of wax in it. It does have a nice fill. I would suggest please send me an email and with some photos, maybe at different angles, so we can get a sense of how deep that scratch is, and we can advise from there. And or send it back to me, and I'll just polish it up for you. That should be good. Would love to help you out with that, because these wallets are supposed to last forever. You will get scratches and scuffs. Like this wallet I wore for, I don't know, 10 years or something. And the scratches do subside, right? But it's part of the joy of wearing leather is it changes. So what I suggest is try not to sweat it, let your leather do its thing and just wear it, let each scratch just like remind you of the time you scratched it. Like, for example, on this wallet that I've been trying out, there's a spot right here that is water from, I was out to dinner with my wife, and I got like pasta sauce or some crap on my wallet, And I tried to wipe it off with some water from my glass, and now I'll have that little water spot there to remind me of a really nice dinner I had with my wife. So that's how I like to think of it. And then it also makes it like your thing. Unless I guess it was like a very negative experience, like you got in a fight and it got scratched, that maybe just get a new wallet. All right, I want to go back to just a quick lineage of the history here. We were talking about Horween leather and the history. They're making shell cordovan. They were making chrome excel leather, and then something really big happened. And it was kind of as a fun consequence of two of the original kids of Isidore turned out to be NFL football players for the Chicago Bears back in the 20s. I didn't take really good notes on that. So Ralph and Arnold Horween were on the original Chicago Bears football team. And I think that was after they were like player coaches at Harvard. So these guys were really into football way back in the 20s. And it turned out in 1941, when Arnold Horween, the ex football player, was running the tannery, he was friendly with, gosh, who is it? Somebody in the NFL, big guy. Hal, I don't know. Nah. So, anyways, they came to be that he had met with this football guy. He said, I make leather. Why don't we do some leather footballs made in Chicago, or made the leather in Chicago, the balls made in Ohio? And they did it. So they've been making leather for the NFL since 1941. And I think that's yes, 1941. I did take a note on that. So 1941, Horween's been making football leather for the NFL balls. They also make the leather for the NCAA footballs, as well as NBA basketballs. They're actually kind of similar leathers. They are different. The football is much tackier. It has something called tanned-in tack, which is a trade secret that I can't share with you, but it is sticky to the touch. And if you brush it, that tackiness comes back out. So that's why football is very special. And the basketball leathers are not sticky like that. So Horween has made a lot of really classic like hits, Chrome Excel, Shell Cordovan, and football leather. And the most recent addition, which came during my tenure at Horween, was a leather called Essex. And it's kind of like this Lancaster. Actually, I think this is an Essex belt that I made a couple of years ago. So Essex is made using the same tree barks as the shell cordovan, and it has that veg tan character where it ages and changes color. In fact, I have a barely worn one. So here's how it starts. It's kind of light, and then you can see like the luster is even changed, which is crazy. Like veg tan does that. It sort of gives you that wet look naturally. And this was a leather that Skip Horween came up with. Sorry. The leather he came up with while I was working there. He said, what would happen if we, instead of putting a horse butt in the tanning pits, why don't we put a side of leather, steer hide into there? And that's how Essex became. When you put a hard wax finish onto the top of the Essex leather, you get a leather called Dublin. And that's what this is. Dublin happens to be my favorite leather right now. And this is relatively recent for that history of Horween. This one is probably the most recent, like big hit. There were many years there at Horween where they were selling a lot of a leather called snuff suede. But throughout the decades, they've had to change their product based on the market. And more recently, I'd say over the last 30 or 40 years, they've had to get more and more specialized. So the mill sizes and the batches that they run are much smaller and much more specific. For example, it's really hard to make military leather because the specs are so high. So Horween will make things like that from time to time. Very performance or very specific leathers that other places just won't do because the sizes are too small or the function is too specific. And that's sort of where Horween fits into the market now. It very much like they make a lot of leather, and the size that they are blows my mind, the scale of it, but they're so small on the scale of leather in the world. They're a blip on the radar. It's nothing for what they do, and they're making millions of feet of leather a year. So the scale of the world always blows my mind. So that's sort of a quick history of Horween. It's an interesting history, and I skimmed through like 80 years of it. But it's now into there's 6 generations of Horween here in Chicago, and I don't see a reason for it to stop. In fact, tomorrow's video, which I'll film on a higher quality camera and not live. There's new leathers coming out of there all the time. I have a new leather to show you tomorrow. Technically, it's a variation on the cordovan, and I've got a bunch of that stuff. So there's no lack of new ideas coming out of the tannery, and I think that's why they're still here. They're just making cool stuff and keep trying to push it. All right. JR. Let's see. JR says, "Hey Phil, you're doing mystery boxes anytime soon?" Yeah, I am planning to do that. The mystery box that will be coming up next will be different. I'm not prepared to tell you specifics on it yet because I don't even know what it's going to be. But keep an eye out over the next week or so. Mystery boxes have been crazy for us too. It's a lot of work for us to put together a box full of 10 things and then do that 50 times because you got so many different products to manage. And what's crazy is how fast you guys buy them. Like the first time we put up mystery boxes, I think they sold out in 17 minutes. So I know that you guys want them, and I want to do that for you. And I'm sorry I missed that comment earlier. Bears blue and the orange thread. Yep. John says Deerbone and VSC works for covering scratches. Yeah, I think you mean Venetian cream. I could be wrong. Venetian shoe cream. Yeah, that does work. I find the Sapphire cordovan cream to work better on the shell cordovan. It has a little bit more wax in it than the Venetian cream. It has a little bit more fill to it that fills in those scratches a little better. I also feel like because of the wax amount that they're choosing to use in there, it gives it a better surface luster that I like on the shell. The Venetian cream is awesome, and there's a reason that Horween has been using that on every piece of shell for over 100 years. So both of them are great products. I like the Sapphire a little bit more. It's more expensive. Tough for me to tell you. I do sell both of those things, although I've been sold out of Venetian cream for like a year because Nick Horween's having some packaging issues on Venetian cream. Michael Kedge. Hey, Michael, I owe you a phone call. My brother told me to call you. I'll call you soon, man. And hopefully you have a good night. Ed, yeah, Venetian shoe cream, VSC. Aaron says, size gives Horween mobility to stay on top of whatever tannage the market wants. It's hard to change a tannery running a shop of the size of 12 football fields. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to change the tannery too, because this gets a little political. They have a specific challenge of having a union, which is good and bad. I would say more good than bad. The challenge of having a union is you have guys or individuals that are members of the union that have specific jobs that are signed for in that union. So if you make a product that doesn't use that guy's job, you put him out of a job. So it makes it specifically hard to manage these old world, like one man has one job union thing. They need to rework the rules that the union and the tannery have as an agreement. That needs to change because they need to be more flexible than they currently are. And they are flexible, but it could be better. And I always just worry about the guy in the machine. Like we need to make sure that guy has a job. And it just doesn't seem right from like either perspective, the company perspective or the union perspective. I want to get quick on, I only have maybe 15, 20 minutes left here. I wanted to give you just a quick history of Ashland, and I have a hard time talking about it because I feel like, how do I feel? I don't like to toot my horn, and I guess it's not like the history of it's not really bragging. I just have a hard time like talking about myself, which is why you might notice on the videos I talk about the things I like, which is like how much I love the leather, the colors and the textures and all that. You don't really hear me like saying how great I am. And I don't do that because I don't like it. I don't really think of myself that way. But the history of Ashland is also sort of like Isidore Horween's history, where it's sort of the American dream. It's, you're starting with just a love for a material and the opportunity to be able to turn that into something else. And that's how Dan and I started Ashland. But the way it started, it was roughly in 2010. And when these things are happening, you like don't write down the dates that things happened. if I remember correctly, it was roughly 2010, and we were both working at the tannery. In fact, Dan and I got to know each other well because I was working there and he started working after me. He came from a different tannery, and I was sort of his chaperone for the first few weeks there, and we became friendly. I would just walk him, he would shadow me around the tannery, and I would show him stuff. And Dan is so incredible at what he does. He's so good. Anyways, we were working there together, and one day he came to me and he said, "Hey, Phil, I made this bag for my wife. Do you want to see it?" It's like, "Yeah, what are you talking about?" So he brought in this leather bag that he like spent like months hand lacing all together. He was like hole punching and lacing leather through. And I said, "Oh my God, that's so awesome. I can't believe you did that." He's like, "Yeah, it took me forever." I said, "Wait a minute, I got something too." And I went to my locker and I came back with something similar to this. This is not the one I came to him with. It was much crappier than this. And I had been teaching myself in the meantime how to hand sew leather because I was just so obsessed walking through the tannery, and you would see literally thousands of different leather colors and textures, and you would want to experience them. You want to touch them and you want to feel them. You want to see how they would age. In fact, I'm still doing it. Uh, are they in these pants? Yeah, here it is. So I still do that. I still take little pieces of leather and put it in my pocket because I want to see what it does. So apparently nothing has changed over all these years. So this is how it started. I would put little pieces of leather in my pocket, and I just wanted to see what would happen to it. Like, and actually, this one got washed in the washing machine by accident. This is a piece of Lancaster that got a little worse after the washing machine. But I just like the concept of something changing with you over time. And between that experience of mine and then meeting with Dan, knowing that we were both crafting stuff in our free time, we sort of looked at each other and had that like aha moment. We're like, oh, maybe we should make some, maybe we should make some stuff. And then we got very businessy about it because I had that at the time. I think I was just out of business school. I was. I was like, well, we're going to do all this planning and we're going to have a successful operation. And it turns out, so we looked at it as like what's the market like? And we would see, wow, there's a lot of people buying leather from Horween that are making men's shoes and men's products. So we said, why don't we do something for women? It seems like a smart idea because this stuff's so great. Wouldn't women like it too? And that made like macro sense, but not micro sense at all. It turns out that for multiple reasons that we don't know anything about what women want. And we thought we would make like bags, women's bags. So we made a few and we actually sold a bunch of bags. My aunt was actually our first customer, and we made a few bags, sold a few bags. But we quickly realized that like we weren't super excited about them because we didn't know it, like we couldn't use it. And while Dan was working on bags, I was secretly working on wallets. And I said, why don't we try one of these out? So we started making a couple Fat Herbies. And at the time, I think we were calling it like the double bifold. I forget what we were calling it. But that's how we started making wallets, is we realized that we didn't know anything about women. And Skip Horween and Nick Horween really liked the Fat Herbies that we made for them. And that's sort of a relationship, that relationship of tanner making material and leather crafter making a finished product. That relationship between them and I still exist. So they would always want the same thing I did. It was like, hey, Phil, why don't you make something out of this new Dublin leather that we're trying out? I don't know what it's going to look like when it's worn. I say, sure, let me make you a Fat Herbie or whatever. So we'd make them a wallet and they would try it out and experience that new tannage that they would make. So it was mutually beneficial. And literally today I had a fun conversation with Skip where he wants me to do that same example. We do that all the time. It's sort of like a relationship partnership where we're developing things. They're developing new leathers and we're putting it into reality for them to try out and see what it's like. And that's a really cool opportunity for me because I still get to have my pleasure of getting to see all these new things, and it's helpful for them because they can get something made out of it. You might have seen in one of the tumbled shell cordovan videos that I've done before, I describe this scenario where if you see a piece of material, especially on leather, like if I look at a sheet of leather, it's very hard. I've gotten much better at it, but I think it's probably impossible for any normal person to look at that sheet of leather and visualize it on a product and understand what it's going to look like, because I think it's the three dimensionality of how things move around when you start to construct them, and even the stitch line makes the leather look different. That makes it makes it hard to know, like, what is that doubling going to look like when it's a thing. And the Horweens were experiencing that as well, and it's very interesting once you even cut a little shape out of it, like a cookie cutter. Just that shape of leather, it looks like a totally different thing. So there's this like very nice synergy, corny word, that is happening between myself and Ashland. What we do there, we don't get anything for free, but what happens in that relationship example is they will give us a piece of leather and then ask us to make a wallet for free, and then that's the trade. But everything else that we get from the tanner, we're like every other customer. We wait 2 years for shell cordovan. We still got orders that we haven't received from like 2018. So we don't get any special treatment, but we do get an opportunity to see the new stuff, and that's really cool. So that's how Ashland started. We thought we were going to be a women's bag company, started making wallets, and that caught fire because it was sort of what I was always doing anyways, like putting leather into my pocket and seeing how it would age. Made the wallets for the Horweens, and they loved it, and they thought the design was great. You know, this Fat Herbie. Both of them are back pocket wallet guys, and this one just happens to lay thinner in a back pocket. So that's how the Fat Herbie took off, and they started suggesting it to people that they knew. One day we had the Horween gets a lot of buyers coming in from different retail stores, and this particular day it was a buyer from a store in Japan and I believe mainland China, and they were buying for a store called Ships. Nick presented this wallet to them, and they loved it. So that's what set our company off to start us. We had a very large order. I believe it was like $30,000 order, which, like, when you're starting a company and you're like funded it with $500, that was mind blowing. So we had to work literally day and night in Dan's like dining room. We put a sewing machine in his dining room and took over his house to crank out wallets for that order. That was crazy. And back then I was like, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it like, we're going to blow people's minds. So I had to think about packaging. So back then I was making a whole extra leather pouch to hold the wallet in. That was a lot of work and a lot of expense. And we were doing the hand wax stamp boxes, which we still do. So there's this moment where I was trying to do like, just blow people away. Oh, my dad's calling me. Sorry, Dad, I'll call you later. So that's how we got started. You know, we had that one order, they ordered again. And I said, you know, maybe we got something here. So I started a web store on a site called Big Cartel, which back then was free, which is why I chose it, because we didn't have much money. And I put up a Fat Herbie on there and didn't know how to promote it. This was 2011, so there wasn't a whole ton of e-commerce. It was sort of like before that took off. And we put up a Big Cartel store, and I was like, maybe somebody will find this. And a month later, one guy bought it. We're like, wow, holy crap, somebody bought a wallet. And then the next month, somebody bought a wallet. And then it sort of like exponentially took off, where it would be, okay, we're selling one wallet a month. All right, now we're selling 2 a month. Now it's 4 a month. And maybe it was more linear. So it started very slow and organic. We never paid for advertising. It's been all word of mouth from people like you that are just spreading the good word. I really appreciate that, by the way. And Fat Herbie was the first one. People liked the Fat Herbie, but they were worried about the size. I said, wow, that's cool. I like the aesthetic, but I don't like how big it is. So we made this guy. And first we were calling this the Mini Herbie. That's how good at marketing we were. So you can see it's the same aesthetic with the exterior bill slot here on the outside of the wallet, but much smaller. And that's the one we are now calling Tony the Ant. And all the wallets are named after gangsters, Chicago gangsters and other mobsters. So those were our first two wallets, and we always knew that we needed like the relatable wallet, like a standard. These are very modern and different. The shapes are not something you've seen before. I think we were probably the first people to do something like this. I don't know. We weren't looking at other people when we were doing this stuff. In fact, I don't even know if people were on the internet putting stuff out. So I don't even know if I could have seen it. But I believe we're the first people to start doing exterior bill slots. I don't know. But we knew that it was different. And then we thought, maybe we should do something that like everybody gets it. You see that and you go, oh, that's a wallet. And that's how these are just wallets, by the way, that I have sitting around at home to like look at every now and then. This is a John the Fox in a really awesome piece of shell. I think it's a natural shell. It's a little dusty. Oh, listen. So that's how we came. We wanted a wallet that was relatable, and that's how John the Fox came about. It's just that traditional bifold that most men envision when they hear the word wallet. Ours has 3 card slots on the right, 3 on the left, and these 2 hidden slots. This was really, really hard to make. It's still hard to make, but back then, like we weren't as good. And making these amount of pieces line up together and not be crazy thick and have it be consistent and straight, that's a big challenge, especially with the hidden slot. So this was something that we knew we wanted to do for like 2 years, and it took us years to be able to like get it good enough to release. And now it's our best seller. So I like this one a lot too. I've always been a Fat Herbie guy just because I'm a back pocket wallet kind of guy, and I like sitting on it and not feel like I'm sitting on a softball. So that's why I still use the Fat Herbie. Every now and then I'll have like 2 or 3 wallets that I'm putting in my pocket at the same time. Just again, because like I like to see how the stuff wears in. So that's how that came about. I also have the Bugs Moran, which is just like the Tony the Ant. Let me show you side by side here. We had people that they would see the Tony. It was similar to how the Tony the Ant came to be. They saw the the Fat Herbie, and they go, "I want it smaller." And so we made the mini Herbie, Tony the Ant, and they said, "Oh, I want it without the bill slot." So that's how we had the Bugs Moran. But we actually took it a few steps further, and we noticed that if you look very carefully, the dimensions are slightly different. You can see that the Tony the Ant is slightly longer. Oh, if you can tell. It's slightly longer, right? It goes farther this way. So at first we were just making them with that huge gap in the center. And then I saw it and I was like, it's a little wide. So we shrunk it down to more appropriately fit cards and cash. And that's how the Bugs Moran came about. Then we have a bunch of accessories and things like that. Some of the newest stuff that we've been doing are watch straps. And I just put up the watch straps back in stock yesterday. We're able to accept orders again. It's taking a little bit longer than before just because of setting up everybody to be working at home. There's the logistic of it. I had to extend the lead time on it because I don't want to tell you something's going to ship in 1 week and have it ship in 1 week and a day. That's just not how I like to do things. I want you to get things when I tell you they're going to be ready or earlier. So watch straps are really cool. I've been wearing my Apple Watch strap for a year. We've been doing a lot of that stuff. We sell a lot of watch straps now. And then belts. I dropped the belt on the floor. So we just recently finished retooling our belt tools. And the new belt, actually I'm wearing one. I'm crazy. Hold on. This is going to be awkward. I'm going to take my pants off. All right. I'll read your comments in a second here. We just finished retooling the belts. I'm super pumped about them. They're crazy comfortable. And it's nothing crazy about it. It's just a single thick piece of awesome leather. And this is, again, the English tan Dublin that I love. We've changed a couple things on it and made the buckle hardware just a little different shape. We used to have sort of this rounded hardware that I never was like angry at. But I like the more squared off one a little bit more as opposed to that more rounded one. I think it's a little bit more interesting. And the other thing that we had changed is the tip shape is slightly different now. It's not a full point. I think this is just a little different. And when you have a tip on the point and it gets bent, it starts to mush and like wiggle around. This sort of prevents that. And I also thought about the same thing. I've seen these teardrop shaped holes before. I like that they're different a lot. And I know people do this. I decided to buy a custom tool to make these different holes because that's the way that the hole is going to wear in eventually anyways, when you put the sort of tongue of the buckle through that hole. So we're starting to make belts again, which is something I took down for a while. So these are really, I've got a couple friends of mine that are trying out different leathers for me on the belts. And in the Dublin and Chrome Excel, they're very like, these are friends of mine that aren't nerdy enough about leather like I am to like know the difference. But they've been buying, a belt from Target for years and years. The belt that we gave them to try out, they go, I don't know what it is about this, but this one doesn't dig into my body like the other one. Oh, that's interesting. Something I hadn't even thought of. So there's this interesting consequence of using the Dublin and Chrome Excel leathers as a belt, where it has this sort of natural rigidity and like it's like a firm yet supple feel of the veg tan character in the leather that I think that's what they're feeling. Where it's like firm enough to like be a substantial thick belt, but soft enough to like give a little bit and not cut into your body and dig into you. So they're very comfortable. They're unlined. We finished the backs with the resin finish, so they're very smooth on both sides. Finish the edges by hand. It takes a long time. Belts are back. If you want a belt, just email me and we can set you up with a belt. I need to take photos. I have so much work to do. I need to take photos of the belts and put them back up online is what I need to do. Gosh, let's go through some comments here. And then I'm going to make my wife a filet mignon. And what are you guys drinking? Cheers. Again, thank you for listening to my spiel. And I hope you learned something about the Horween and Ashland history. I like talking about this stuff, and I should probably be better at like a script, but I feel like I rather just hang out and chat with you and like wing it, then I'm not lying. All right, let's see. Kevin Boyer says, has Horween been able to stay open? Unfortunately, no. And again, I'm trying to help out. I'm working on something really special. It's why I've been distracted and not doing daily videos as frequently as before. I'm trying to come up with a program to help support Horween and people that use Horween and local makers in Chicago. I have an incredible, it's been taking a lot of time, but it's almost like starting another company. And I've got a lot of exciting things to share on that. So stay tuned for that. Horween is not open right now. What they are doing is they're finishing leather from a perishable state and getting it to a non-perishable state. So there's only a handful of people there right now that are partially working on leather. It's complicated and I feel horrible about them. I can't imagine what it would be like to sit on millions of dollars in inventory and have nobody to make it and nobody to accept a delivery of it. So Alden's not accepting deliveries and Allen Edmonds not accepting deliveries. They can't even ship the stuff they have ready to sell. God, that's hard. And they're closed right now. It's not good. They're not going to close forever. They'll be fine. I talked to Skip about that. They're fine. They'll be fine. Don't worry. They're not closing forever. Yeah, Kevin, thanks, man. I try to be humble. I don't really have much of an ego about anything unless I think like I'm like really strongly feel about something that I'll push back on you. Like if somebody thinks my bass playing sucks, I'll tell you no. Hey, JA63 Impala. Hi, Aaron. You're most definitely right about some of the archaic principles of a union. I'm in union. Can definitely say it feel a lot of pain directly caused by those principles. It's so hard to criticize a union. I feel like even awkward just bringing up the concept. I get it. Like we need them. I think the relationship, it's like such a, like if my marriage was a union in the sense that like a workplace union, that's not a healthy relationship at all. There's like no give and take. It's like you're going to go to bed at 10 and you're going to wake up at 6 and you're going to make dinner and have it ready at a certain time. And if you don't 3 times in a row, you're fired. It's like, okay, things happen. Let's like just be adults about it. But apparently like we can't do that, but we need to protect workers from terrible owners. I think I have this perspective because I know the owners of Horween, and they're just great people, and they wouldn't screw other people over anyways. So I think I have like the opposite perspective. I know that there's total assholes out there too that are going to screw people over. So we need the unions for them. I don't know how much political that was. Vegan V says, I don't know if women know what they want. Yeah, no comment. Level 100, Raichu. I love seeing the before and after leather wallets. Me too, man. That's why we started Ashland. There's something magical about it. Totally. Let's see what other comments. Yeah, we had a level 100 says a $30,000 order. Could you imagine being like just some kid right out of school, working at a tannery, living with 3 other dudes because can't get by? Like I remember at that time, like $20 was a lot for me. Like if I had $20 on a Friday night, it's like, man, this $20 is gonna last me until Wednesday or whatever. It was tough, and then I think I got a lot of drive from that experience, so I don't regret it at all. Hustling and doing stuff I love. So yeah, $30,000 order was crazy to get, like for your first big order. Kevin says, what country other than the US do you sell most of your products to? Let's do that. Like just in Shopify, let me give you some real numbers. But we ship all over the world. Maybe better would be analytics. We're getting serious with numbers. Well, maybe it doesn't tell you by country in here. No. Let's take a look at something else. Look at Google Analytics. Audience. Geo? Location. Yeah. All right. We're getting there. Who asked this question? Kevin B. We're getting there, Kevin. Let's look at the last 30 days. All right. So United States, number 1. Canada, number 2. Japan, number 3. They're basically the same number. Singapore, Hong Kong, United Kingdom, Australia, Germany, India. That's crazy. I don't remember shipping more than a couple items to India. So these aren't sales. These are people that have visited the site. Thailand, I know we ship a lot to Thailand over there, not a lot, but it's mostly like US, Canada, Japan, Singapore, a lot to Hong Kong, Philippines, South Korea, Malaysia, France, Italy, Netherlands, there's some people in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, that order from us. Russia, Mexico, Vietnam, Turkey, Belgium, Spain, Finland, Sweden, Brazil, Switzerland, Denmark. Yeah. Israel, I remember that. Norway, but it's not like these other countries. There's not a lot. It's mostly domestic US, especially after the dollar seems to have changed. I think Richard, who's probably still in the chat, will tell you that it's hard to buy things that are sold in US dollars right now because US dollar value is pretty high, I think, or maybe it's just the UK was in the toilet. So that was a high detail answer for your question. Which color leather is the watch strap you're currently wearing? This is black reverse shell cordovan, and I get it on that too. Like the black shell cordovan, which is that side, the reverse side of the cordovan is more of like a greenish shade. I've worn this a bit, and it's dulled out some of the green. It's turned a little bit more tan, but you can see like hints of green in it. It's hard to show. But the coolest thing about this reverse strap is the more I wear it, like you can see how it's starting to mold to my wrist like that. And on the other side too. But it's the luster is changing, which is really cool. It's starting to get brighter and shinier. So black reverse shell Apple Watch band is what I'm currently wearing. Squared off, rounded. All right, yeah, I'm glad you like that. I'm glad you like the squared off belt tip. Randy's got a Dublin belt. I'm glad you like it, man. Ed said, I'm glad I watched the live stream tonight. By far the most interesting and best video I've seen on YouTube. You got to watch some more YouTube, man. One of my bandmates linked me a video called Cute House. Search Cute House in YouTube after this. That was a really funny skit. I believe your business model, quality, passion, etc., will yield exponential growth. I hope so too. We're just trying to do the right thing, you know. I think people can see that I'm a real person, and I think we're itching for this experience. I am too, of having like a real person on the other end. If I go order something on Amazon, it's like I feel like I'm working with robots. I like feeling like there's a real person there, even though the internet is tough to do that. Um, it's been a blast. Yep. Thanks for coming to hang out, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm just trying to go through the questions. Richard, I'm glad your JR fold is there. I hope I had a couple other people pick up the JR. They said they were confused by it at first, but the more they've worn it, they see it start to mold around. I think the more you wear it, the better it's going to get. New York City, level 100, man. I know you guys are getting hit hard there with the Corona stuff, and I'm sorry. I hope that you're staying safe, and hope everybody that you know is healthy and everybody's improving. Let's see. When are belts coming back in stock? Bradley Baker. Um, it's literally a matter. Like I could put them in stock tonight. I just have too many other things that I got to do. So look for that in if you want a belt, just let me know because I have some that are partially like I could have you a belt tomorrow if you want one. So just email me or my brother at info@ashlandleather.com. We'll set you up with the belt. I've got plenty that are like 99% done right now. We just got to finish them up. Aaron, Phil, can we have fun over a beer chatting about unions when I finally make it out there on all this? Uh, yeah, thanks for the well wishes. I'll tell my wife you said hi, and I'll make sure to make her a good steak. Um, yeah, yeah. The pound is feeling it, Richard. Yeah, it's tough. All right, guys. Excuse me while I read. Yeah, I wish there was a graph of all the leathers in their patinaed state. That's funny that you said that because my brother was thinking about doing that. He wanted to call it the patina potential graph. It's hard though, like it's hard to quantify that stuff, you know? Like this natural Lancaster, we had a hot day here the other day. It was like 80 degrees and I went on a walk and you might not be able to see, but some of my denim has rubbed off into the center here when it got hot. Um, but it is not changing color. Like this is still pretty light for the Lancaster. It's patinaing in a different way. Like it's getting shiny. Like actually you can see it right there. It's always so hard for me to get this luster on camera. It looks awesome in person. It's like glass, but because it's so light, it's hard to get like a photo of it even. But the way that it's developed, it started off like matte and dull, and it's very glassy and shiny now. It's really cool. But he had an idea for that. It's so hard because like it's almost like a yes or no, like it does patina, and you can figure that out if the leather's vegetable tanned or not. That's really the only thing that's going to patina is a veg. And the lighter colors of veg will patina more dramatically than the darker ones. Um, uh, Rigando, before you go, any plans to make backpacks or satchels? I was, I want, yes, I want to do that. What's crazy, and part of the reason I started taking Ashland full time, we can't even make wallets as fast as people want them, and watch straps and belts. And I've got all these. We have more good ideas than we do time. I do want to do backpacks and shoulder bags. Everything. I want to do it all. It's sort of a time challenge at the moment, and I need to figure that out. That's my problem, not yours. I don't want to promise you that right now. It's probably a couple of years out, but I do want to do that. Thanks, hey Tim. I really appreciate you saying that about my wife. All the people working at a hospital right now, even if they're working sweeping the floors, those people are absolute heroes. And if you know a healthcare worker, you gotta thank them. All your family members are nurses, so definitely scary. Yeah, so you get. I mean, you see what I'm feeling. It's weird. Like I told her, I was like, and she admits that like this is literally what she was made for. Like she loves helping people, and she was scared to go in. And I said, you know, I'm scared too, but this is why we do what we do, and this is why you get up in the morning. And she doesn't like being called a hero. Um, maybe she's got some of that modesty that I have, but she is right. I mean, how selfless is that to literally walk into hell next to a virus that can potentially kill you and just help other people. So she's the definition of a hero, and so are your family members, and I thank them too. I'm glad you guys are here to hang out, and I do have to go. I'm a little bit over budget on time here. I want to make my wife a nice dinner, and let's do this again. I always love doing these. It's that time thing I struggle with. So I'll have to slot out times like this. I think scheduling it in advance, like we did today, was helpful. Probably for you. I got to find out a good way to communicate this. I think what I'll do is on the community tab of the YouTube page here, I'll start posting in there with dates and times that I'd like to do this, and then I'll schedule out the live stream. The day of, so you'll know it's coming. You'll see it's coming, and then we can hang out and do this again. And you can get your beer ready. And when all this virus goes away, we're getting drunk. That's the plan. So thanks again, guys, for coming to hang out. If you have other questions, you can leave a comment in the video. I'll get to them when I can. But I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Riggando. Thank you, Level 100. Vegavis, always great to see you too. I always remember Vegavis's name because I guessed how to pronounce it and I got it right. John A, thanks for coming by. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Check out tomorrow's video because I got a new shell cordovan leather. Like it's awesome, and you're not going to want to miss it. So thanks again. I'll see you guys. Take care.